no, your ass better call somebody.
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. We ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on our channels and on X. Hopefully, everybody is enjoying a Mets victory on this Tuesday as the Mets win 10-4 against the Miami Marlins. Yesterday, it was just an all-around perfect type of game that we needed to see from this Mets fan. We were very disappointed about the Houston series, and they came around offensively big time, and we'll talk all about that and, of course, previewing tonight's game. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Want to shout out everybody that is in the chat, that was in the chat for the post game yesterday. I know that you couldn't make it, Rob, but, you know, I held it down. The chat held it down. It was a lively chat, and it was good vibes all around. How could it not be with that hit parade that the New York Mets, put on display in Miami? A hit parade, a home run parade. It was awesome. And the pitching was good too, you know, all the way from David Peterson to Huascar Brazaban. Danny Young came in and he was kind of iffy in the 9th inning. But you know what? Mets win, even up their record 2-2. Straight good vibes, just like strictly good vibes in the post game. Was awesome. And I'm happy to be here. I am in a little bit of a time crunch on this pregame, so I do apologize. I cannot make the post game tonight, which I'm very sad about because this pitching matchup, Senga versus Alcantara, I kind of got into it yesterday. There's some ramifications, right? Not only for Kodai Senga in this season, but also Sandy Alcantara if the Mets are scouting him at the trade deadline. So we're going to see what's going to happen and what's going to transpire. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on last night's game as well.
Yeah, it was, we talked about the lineup. We didn't like it yesterday. It wasn't something that, we didn't like Marte in the leadoff spot. Marte got it started with the solo home run. It tied up the ball game. We're like, all right, not bad. Marte, hit that hanger, and we went off and running after that. Love to see Pete Alonso going oppo for that grand slam. Brandon Nimmo showed some power. All around. Terrenz even looked good. I mean, it was just all around really, really good. Brett Beatty showed some damn life yesterday and hitting the ball in the left center field gap. Everything just came full circle yesterday, and that's exactly what we were looking for. This was a team that you have to dominate. The Mets dominated from top to bottom. They dominated the pitching side, and they dominated the offensive side. And this is what you have to do against a team that you're playing that is a bunch of no-names. And, it's no disrespect to these guys, but let's be honest. Half of us don't even know half these players on this team. You might know one, maybe 2 or 3 players on this team. You got to take full advantage of it, and this is exactly what the Mets did yesterday. And I'm excited because, you know what, today's a day where you take a series, right? No letdown. I know you got a really good pitcher on the mound, but it's Sandy Alcantara just getting back from injury. What is this, his second or third start of the season?
Second start.
Second start of the season. Let's get it done. This is a guy that, maybe he's thinking, hey, maybe I shouldn't win. I might be on this team. But, of course, he's not going to think like that. But it would be nice if he thought like that. But, this is a possibility for the Mets at the deadline. If the Mets are going to go after pitching, if that's the need they will have at the deadline. He's obviously probably target number one, but this is a very interesting matchup because the intriguing part is Kodai Senga. And oh, by the way, yesterday, what about David Peterson? 6 innings, 2 runs. He was really good. I believe he had 8 strikeouts? 9 strikeouts yesterday. I mean, that was an outstanding performance by him all around. And I mean, that's probably the best start of the season so far for the New York Mets in this very early part of the season, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, all top to bottom, we covered it all in the post game. David Peterson was electric again, trying to make that step into potentially being an ace-like figure in this rotation. Now that we have the news of Sean Manaea being set back for a couple of weeks in his rehab, so that's unfortunate. Not what you want to hear. Now the updated timetable for Sean Manaea with this recent news is about late May for his potential return. And honestly, I have my doubts about that. Maybe it's early June instead of late May. We'll see exactly what happens and how he's healing and progressing, but not the news that you wanted to hear coming from this Mets rotation. But David Peterson's going to have a big impact on this rotation. We knew this going into the season, even with, Manaea and Montas healthy, but now he really has to step it up, right? I think he is the guy. Kodai Senga, okay, for sure. Let's see 2023 version of him. I get that. Clay Holmes, let's see what he's going to do in his first year back as a starter. But I really think that David Peterson, of all the guys in this rotation, is going to have a lot to say about the success of this rotation, while it's still on the mend, so to speak. So, yeah, yesterday was an awesome performance. As we stated in the pregame yesterday, he was throwing the sinker and four-seam combination. He was able to get it over for the majority of the strikes, and then he was using that changeup as his pretty much third pitch to get hitters out. He got some fantastic outs when he really needed to, when he was in some jams in the early goings of the game. One huge strikeout in one inning, and then another one was an inning-ending double play started by Pete Alonso. That was beautiful, and the offense just came alive. I mean, Marte also got hit twice, by the way. I don't know that, but he's just a ball magnet. Juan Soto with a tremendous at-bat, a tremendous walk to set up that situation for Pete Alonso to hit that grand slam. Brandon Nimmo finally getting into one. Everybody had a hit. Everybody accounted for a hit. Jose Siri going the opposite way to get, the lead for the New York Mets via a double. And Luis Angel Acuna starting that big fifth inning that the Mets scored 7 runs in with an infield single. I mean, he hit the ball hard, right? The guy made a tremendous diving stop. He hit it about 104 miles per hour off of his bat. And that's the thing before we talk about, we should talk about Kodai Senga versus Sandy Alcantara, but, who's at second base with the righty on the mound? Who gets the start? Brett Beatty did have, a hit, his first hit of the season, opposite field. It was awesome in the later stages of the game, but this is a very big sign for me in terms of the Mets' plans and seeing what Brett Beatty potentially has done. Now, I'm not saying that's what they're basing it off of. Sandy Alcantara is a high, ground ball pitcher, and he loves to induce the ground ball. So that's probably what's also in the mind of Carlos Mendoza, getting the speedier guy to start. But just interesting stuff top to bottom to analyze before this game.
Yeah, and I'm more thinking of the line is where they're looking at what Acuna over Beatty is the fact that this might be a low scoring game. They think that Alcantara is going to give the Mets lineup a hard time, and speed might actually help, pull through a run. And you see what the speed does, and Acuna has tremendous speed considering the fact that what he did yesterday, being out that infield single. And he's just quick. He went first to home. I mean, in a matter of a sec, it was so quick how fast he went around those bases. And, that one run can matter, especially a day like today with Sandy Alcantara. I understand that, second start of the year, he's, still getting back into the groove, but he's still a damn good pitcher. He's got electric stuff. And I think we can all agree that we don't know what we're getting from Kodai Senga today. We really don't. It's first start of the year. The Mets held him back from the first series just to give him a little bit extra time. So we really don't know what we're going to get from Kodai Senga. Is it going to be just a 4-inning outing? Is there a strict pitch count limit that he's going on? We don't really know. We'll obviously see this during the game. But even if he does, I'm assuming like a Max Kranick is the guy that's going to piggyback off him, or even a Jose Buto is going to. So one of those two guys are going to be that multi-inning guy after he's done. I'd be shocked if he goes past the 5th inning. I'm thinking probably more aligned around 4 innings. I think pitch count matters more than innings, but depending on his location and, just his, where he is around the strike zone, if he can, limit that pitch count, he might get into the 5th inning. But I think it's a very hard cap when it comes to the pitch count with Kodai Senga. So I think that's the thing that I feel right now that the Mets that at least we have to worry about in regards to Kodai Senga, because even though Alcantara's second start of the year coming back from injury, they're going to protect him. But what are we getting from Kodai Senga? Overall, nobody really has an idea. There's some that's going to be confident, some that's not going to be confident. I'm kind of in between there. The Mets did baby him back, waiting until the 5th game of the season to start him, right? They didn't pitch him against the Astros the first series of the year, and they basically held him back for basically like 8-9 days. So he's really ready to go, and the Mets can't baby him anymore. This is probably the most amount of rest he's going to get between start is this start today. So even if there is a hard, strict pitch count for Kodai Senga, he needs to pitch well, right? There is no excuse of why you pitch bad. Yeah, you might not have it, but the Mets gave you extra days off just to get everything that you need to do it, what you got to get from Kodai Senga today, Chris. So, the Mets did everything they possibly could to give him as much time as possible for his first start of the year in Game 5. Skipped over that Astros series, and now you're in the middle of the series against the Marlins. What is your take about what are you expecting from Kodai Senga? Do you think there's going to be a strict pitch count? Do you think they'll be very careful with him? And it's probably going to be similar to what we've seen in the Houston series. It's either going to be Kranick or Budo getting them multi-innings right after him.
Yeah, I was curious about this, and this is why I have my live chat poll, being what it is in terms of that 84 pitch range that we've seen Mendoza kind of utilize so far in the first couple of games, the first 4 games. It's ranged between 85 to 89 pitches. Yesterday, it was 89 pitches for David Peterson. I think it was 87 for Griffin Canning, and so on and so forth. So I'm really curious, and I think the Mets are going to be super cautious with Kodai Senga because they have that luxury early on the season to utilize some of these guys like Huascar Brazaban for multiple innings, like Jose Buto, like Max Kranick. And I think that Carlos Mendoza knows that. And I think that was always going to be the game plan, but especially now that, the news dropped about Sean Manaea, they don't want anything to happen to Kodai Senga. They don't want another guy going down because then the Mets will be in trouble. So I do think that there's going to be an imposed limit, a pitch limit, and whether the Mets come out directly and state that or not, I think that we'll see it. And I'm curious, is it going to be 75 pitches? Is it going to be 80? Is it going to be 85? What is the magic number, to get Kodai Senga out of the ballgame? Now, it's fluid. Everything's fluid because, it depends on the situation of the ballgame, the score, how Kodai Senga has been faring up until that point. So, but I do think that there's going to be a little bit of caution that the Mets are going to err on the side of. Yeah. And that's just how I think that we're going to, approach that. But this is a great matchup. Kodai Senga versus Sandy Alcantara. I mean, it doesn't really get better than this in terms of the pitching standpoint. So I'm excited. And I'm excited to see some swing and misses on the Ghost Fork.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In an alternate universe where Kodai Senga was healthy all last year and Alcantara was healthy all last year, this would be a premier matchup, right? This would be, top of the line. This is where everybody wants to watch this game and see how these guys are going to pitch and dominate lineups. But, I mean, for all honesty, though, I think it's big question marks for both of them right now. I don't think anybody knows what we're going to get from both of these guys today. We know they got really good stuff, but what are they going to get? Both teams are going to be very protective. We know why Alcantara is going to get protected by the Marlins because this is their prime jewel that they're going to be trading at the deadline for major prospects. So they got to keep him healthy. So they're not going to push him at all. If he's struggling a little bit, or even if he's pitching well, but his pitch count is up, he's out of the game as quickly as possible. And that's the key to this Mets lineup today, is to do everything they can to get Alcantara out of the game as early as possible, because you're going to go into a very bad Marlins bullpen that, they have okay numbers, but I don't think they're very good. that's the key to the Mets' success. And when it comes to Senga's success, hopefully that ghost fork is working, because if he doesn't have it, what other pitches he's going to use to, to get out of jams, get through a lineup that's really not that good. But with Kodai Senga, what do you think the key is besides the ghost fork pitch? Do you want to see? What do you want to see from Kodai Senga to get through a Marlins lineup that is not, a juggernaut?
More strikes. That's all you really have to do. And that's something like you can afford to get cute against good lineups. The Marlins are not a good lineup, and you have to almost get cute against good lineups. And there's a time and a place for it, right? Situationally, but there's no reason to throw anything but strikes to these guys. And I'm not saying that the Marlins can't go out there and win a ball game. I mean, they beat, the Pittsburgh Pirates. I know the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't really that great, but they're a major league ball club at the end of the day. But I'm looking to see if he can command his fastball. It all starts with the fastball. Do you notice a pattern of every single outing and every single pregame that we talk about these pitchers? What is the key? You throw strikes with your fastball. You are, you have the hitters at your mercy. That's basically what it is. And you do that by throwing fantastic located fastballs, 0-0, maybe 0-1, 1-0, doesn't really matter. But you get yourself in an advantageous count. And that's really what is the key. And there is no better way to practice that than against the Marlins, a subpar lineup. I think that this is the perfect, and this is really why I think that maybe the Mets did this in terms of aligning this rotation also this way. I'm not really sure they wanted Kodai Senga to face a pretty damn good lineup in Houston game 1 or the opening series. Now I know that there's other things involved in terms of lining up off days. I understand that, and they're never ever, they're never going to come out and openly state that. But I think that for Kodai Senga's first start in, his first regular season start in, who knows how long, right? Mid-season last season, whenever he came back for that one game, whatever. I really think that this is the perfect opportunity and the perfect lineup for him to face and just work on his craft. That's what I think. But command of the fastball, Rob, set up the ghost fork pitch in a successful way.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't make it easier for him. Whatever they wanted to do, give him an extra day, a couple of days, or whatever it was. They were trying to make this easy as possible. Again, this is a major league club. As much as the players are mostly minor leaguers, but they're a major league ball club, right? But the best thing they can do is what they did, and they set it up perfectly for him. Even if he doesn't have his great stuff, he should still have a pretty good outing against this team. Anything less, if it's not a good outing, that we're talking about anything but a poor performance where he gave up a couple of runs. I mean, nobody's gonna panic, but you want to see you want to see that electricness that we've seen from him in 2023. That's where you want to see a little bit of that, that little hint of that, so you get a little bit excited about his next start, because in his next start, he'll have an extra day. He won't have 8 or 9 days. He'll have that extra day, which he'll be pitching on his 6th day. So he'll have that extra day once again after this start, because of another off day after this, going back home on Thursday when they're off. So that's what they need to do. And I hope that that's what we can get from Kodai Senga, because if he pitches okay and he, gets that pitch count up and he gets himself into jams and it's not a solid outing against a lineup that he should be pretty decent against, I'm concerned about the next start, because he will be there'll be certain days where he'll be going on the 5th day. Can he handle it? Can he do it? And I think the Mets are trying everything possible to make every situation perfect for him. And, with the Mania news, and if you're just tuning in, guys, Mania had a setback, probably won't be ready until late May. It's probably going to be June. They're not going to rush him back. And Kodai Senga is another piece of the puzzle that is so important now that we know Mania is not going to be back for at least for the first 2 months of the season. And Kodai Senga needs to step up. It's not always going to be a perfect situation for them to set them up with off days and, extra days. When they need him, he needs to pitch, and he needs to pitch well.
That's what it is. I got nothing to add to that.
There you go. All right, guys. So let's talk about the lineup a little bit, right? You brought up a little bit about Luis Acuna getting the start against the righty. You did go away when I said it. You probably heard me or not, but I'm going to say it again for the people who just tuned in as well. I think it's about if, as advertised, Sandy Alcantara pitches well and Kodai Senga pitches well, you would think it'd be a low-scoring game, and one run might be the difference. And you saw with the Luis Acuna's speed yesterday, going first to home, and just how smooth and how beautiful the speed is. I think he was thinking, you know what, Beatty finally got that hit. He had a little much better at bats than he had probably in the previous games that he played, but Luis Acuna also had as well. And I wonder if Mendoza's looking more about the speed, even more than the defense, because Beatty has been fine. I think it's more about the fact that Luis Acuna's speed can do so much damage. And with Acuna and Siri, their speed, if they can get on base, I think they're thinking, hey, if it's a low-scoring game, that speed can make the difference, Chris.
Yeah, and again, like I said earlier, Alcantara is a ground ball pitcher. If you look at the 2023 Savant page for him, he induces a lot of ground balls. It was up in like the 87th percentile, something like that. It's ridiculous. A lot of off speed mixed in between. He does throw the sinker, the two seam running into right-handed hitters a lot. That's his predominant pitch. At least it was in the first game of the season this year against Pittsburgh. And he throws a lot of other junk that just gets hitters to top the baseball into the ground. And I think that, the Mets hitting coaches, the staff, the analysts, they look at all of this, right? And so that is definitely one of the key factors of putting Luis Angel Acuna in this lineup today as well. It was nice to see them up the middle, to be honest with you, yesterday in terms of like a working tandem. Brett Beatty made some good plays, the routine plays as well. I'm glad that Francisco Lindor's back in the lineup, but it was just kind of refreshing to see them up the middle, just so we have, and of course we wouldn't have been saying that if it was a loss, right? But all is good because it was a win. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's definitely the speed factor, which is why I said from the start that Luis Angel Acuna is going to have a bigger impact on this team, presumably with him being out on the field, than Brett Beatty will. Nobody wanted to listen. I get that there's a lot of fans that are still holding out hope for Brett Beatty, and I don't blame you because, I mean, I guess I still am as well. He's on this roster until he's not. But it's like, when we had those conversations about, do you put Acuna on the Major League squad or do you give him everyday at-bats in AAA? My answer was always, I don't care about AAA at-bats. At this point, we don't even know if Luis Angel Acuna cares about AAA at-bats. He can impact the game in so many different ways, and it's not just him starting. You saw in Houston, he's a pinch runner in the seventh inning, something like that, swipes a bag immediately. There's ways that speed just impacts the game that if you don't have speed, you just can't replicate. And I think that's very obvious. So I'm happy to see him back in the lineup. I would love to see him play as much as possible before Jeff McNeil gets back. And, I still remain unimpressed with Brett Beatty in terms of the at-bats. He had a great hit later on the ball game. It was against a guy that I don't think anybody's really heard of in their bullpen. But Luis Angel Acuna, I'm not going to pretend like he's also knocking the cover off the baseball because he's not. But he's got a better chance of getting on base. He's been a little bit more selective in his at-bats going back to the Houston series and game one yesterday, I think. And I just think that on paper and just to the naked eye, if you had to give me the question of who is outperforming who, it's almost impossible to answer that question after only 4 games, but I would just say Luis Angel Acuna, non-biasedly, with that speed. That's it.
I agree. I just based on the what he can do on the base path, and again, I don't think anybody's like way in the lead here. And it will be interesting when McNeil comes back. What are the Mets going to do? Because again, even with McNeil healthy, they were still picking Brett Beatty over Luis Angel Acuna. We all believed that was going to be the case. So I don't know how much Luis Angel Acuna what he has to do to take that spot from Beatty when McNeil comes back, but it will be very interesting. But until that happens, they're both on the team and they both need to step up and do the job, regardless of who's in the lineup, if they're both in it or one of them is in it. I want to give a big shout out because when Francisco Alvarez got hurt, there was a little bit of concern because everybody was expecting a bounce back year from Francisco Alvarez. He gets hurt. Luis Torrens gets the starting job. Another 2 hits yesterday. The guy is just good. He's a good catcher. This guy can start on probably almost every team in baseball. And to have a backup catcher that can fill that role as a starter with basically no bumps at all. He's been solid defensively. He thrown out, I believe, 2 runners this year. He's been really damn good, and the bat is probably better than advertised at this point. And again, he is a backup catcher. He'll probably go through his struggles, but right now, I'm probably more confident than anybody else in this lineup other than Soto, Luis Torrens. If guys are on base, I want him up because he seems like even if he doesn't get the job done, he'll put a very tough at bat together. Maybe he'll move the runner over. Maybe he'll get a sac fly, but he probably won't strike out. And it seems like he'll put the bat on the ball at any cost. And the biggest shock, I'm not going to say shock, but the biggest surprise filling in for Francisco Alvarez is Torrens right now in the first 4 games of the season, Chris.
I mean, I said it before the season started. Our season preview, not enough people are talking about Luis Torrens being an impact bat in the bottom of the Mets order. I mean, in order to really lengthen the lineup out and make it a little bit more balanced than, it might have been given the injuries to some of the guys in Alvarez and McNeil at the bottom of the order. Luis Torrens was the pick that I stated. I was like, not many people are talking about him, but we're going to get to a point in the season, whether it's in the first couple of games or whether it's in the first month or two, that we are going to be like, wow, this guy is awesome. He's a true pros pro. And he's not some superstar catcher. He's not going to wow you with anything that he provides, but he is just a solid all-around defender, and he has a good bat. Doubles, singles is usually his game. He's kind of gap to gap, maybe more so opposite field contact over the power, although he does have some of that sneaky pop when he first joined the Mets, when he came over via trade from the Yankees organization last year. The home run power was evident and it kind of tapered off, but he still remained a pretty decent bat. And I expect the same this season, to be honest with you. Now, I will still say that this catching position is probably going to be Francisco Alvarez's when he gets back. I will say that because I just don't see the Mets decommitting from the young talent. But I think that Luis Torrens is certainly buying his way into more playing time in terms of that platoon right now. And more so than the guys at second base are trying to do in terms of winning the job over from Brett Beatty. So I like Luis Torrens. Yesterday, everybody seemed to be complaining about him in the 6th spot. And I understood why it kind of looked like, why is Torrens batting 6? But this guy is a veteran. He's, he will put together decent at-bats. But it's also funny that you say that in terms of moving the runner over, because he had a golden opportunity to do so yesterday in the second inning, and he failed to do it, ironically. But he hit the ball hard to the shortstop, and the runner just couldn't advance. But no, I agree with you. He's a very tough strikeout, and that's what's most important in terms of prioritizing contact, because that gives you the best chance of moving the runner over or bringing the runner in, even if you're making an out via sac fly or just a ground ball that's well placed. So I like Luis Torrens a lot. And I hope more Mets fans start appreciating him and start talking about him more, because I think that with what he's produced so far early this season, I got to say that you're right. In terms of the secondary bat, that's been the most impressive for me so far. I mean, I can throw Pete Alonso in that conversation just because of his selectiveness, right? And some of the walks that he's drawing when he would strike out on some of those pitches last year. But other than that, in terms of production, it's Juan Soto and Luis Torrens is probably 2. Now, the season's very early. Again, things can taper off. I'm not expecting tremendous things out of Luis Torrens, for the entire season. But I appreciate the guy, and that's a classic David Stearns pickup early last season that is now paying dividends for the team next season as well, right? And it's just like those moves they just go unnoticed at the time and they get laughed at, but David Stearns has the last laugh with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of people are bringing it up in the chat. It's going to be interesting because, obviously, I don't care how good your starting catcher is, they're going to need days off. And Luis Torrens is going to need a day off here and there. I wonder if he's going to get the day off tomorrow, as it's kind of like a midday type of game around, a 4:00 game tomorrow. I wonder if Hayden Senga is going to get the start tomorrow, which, listen, you have to give Torrens a break, right? You can't overuse him the first week of the season. And I know there's an off day on Thursday, traveling back to New York for the home opener. But I would be okay. Give Senga a chance. Let's see what he got. We know he's good behind the plate when it comes to defensively, and he has a cannon for an arm. So I think that's a good sign. But I think you got to give Torrens a day off. I really do. And that's why this game is crucial, right? Because you don't want to lose today and then risk losing the series tomorrow. I know maybe Torrens is not going to make or break a game to win it, but I mean, you don't want to lessen your lineup and go into a rubber game tomorrow with Clay Holmes, who had not a great start against the Astros, and I guess you could say you kind of have the pitcher matchup tomorrow, as you got the infamous Connor Gillespie, the same name, different player, going against the Mets tomorrow. But it will be very interesting to see if Torrens gets the day off tomorrow. So, Chris, I know you got to go in a couple of minutes. What is your final thoughts, and what is the key to success for Game 2 of the series against the Marlins and win this series?
Yeah, my final thoughts are one, just like you said earlier in the stream, when we were kind of critiquing the lineup a little bit yesterday, they get the job done. I mean, Carlos Mendoza knows what he's doing. Starling Marte batting leadoff, everyone hates it. Okay, book him for a home run. You know what I mean? Like, it's just funny how it works. And Carlos Mendoza just seems he's just on top of it, man. He's just always on top of it. So salute to Carlos Mendoza. I feel like not enough people are talking about that. No Francisco Lindor yesterday, no problem. Marte in the leadoff spot, contributions with the home run ball, the equalizer early in the game, and also just getting on base 3 times in total. The key to success today clearly is getting Sandy Alcantara out of the game as early as possible. Now, we do think that he's only going to go 5 innings. The Marlins don't want to get him injured or aggravate something because, again, we know that there's a bigger picture plan with them and him in terms of dealing him potentially at this deadline. So I think that he'll be limited to 5 innings regardless, but don't even the Marlins manager to flirt with giving him the 6th inning if he's only about 60 pitches, 65 pitches through. You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't do it. And I'm going to be looking to see who is successful in this Mets lineup of lifting the baseball against Sandy Alcantara, right? It's almost like if you're Carlos Mendoza, dinner's on me if you get a double in the gap off of Sandy Alcantara, the first one to do it. Because, again, you talk about the ground ball rate with Sandy Alcantara, it can be annoying, just topping baseballs into the ground. Those are easy plays for the infielders. You know what I mean? And I also have to think with the Brett Beatty decision, with how many ground balls that he has hit in his career and also so far this season, that also maybe played into, why Mendoza didn't want to go with him, because that just feeds into Sandy Alcantara's strength, plus the speed that we already talked about with Acuna. So I'm looking to see in this lineup who has the most lift on the baseball and who's able to get the most lift. But again, Juan Soto is going to, get the job done. He went 1 for 4, hit early on, but he makes an impact on the game because he beautifully sets up that bases loaded opportunity for Pete Alonso. And that's the one thing that I also wanted to shout out Juan Soto for, is that he learned from what happened in Houston when he was trying to be the man, quote unquote, in that last inning against Josh Hader, swinging at something that is very uncharacteristic of him to swing at. Yesterday, same opportunity kind of arises, but earlier in the ball game, not as big of a situation, but still pretty, it wasn't as big of a situation, but still a situation where you can hand the baton over to the guy after you and you just trust in that guy, because, whatever that pitcher was throwing, I think it was still Cal Quantrill yesterday, who was in that ball game. I think the Marlins manager rode with Cal Quantrill in that game a little bit too long.
Yeah, rookie manager
that was kind
mistake.
It was peculiar to me. It was peculiar to me, but again, I don't really know what's going on over there. Like, what options does he realistically have in that bullpen? You know what I mean? But Juan Soto making an impact on the game. Some things that we also didn't even talk about, on this pregame that happened yesterday that I talked about in the postgame is just like backing guys up. Like, Darren mentioned it yesterday in the chat, Acuna backing up Vientos, and also Jose Siri saving a run, backing up Juan Soto, who was trying to make a shoestring grab. That's like the little things in baseball, the IQ things where you're focused in the game, heads in the game, backing players up. That's what David Stearns loves. That's why he brings these defensive-minded players. Last year's Harrison Bader, Tyrone Taylor's also very defensive-minded, and also Jose Siri, defensive-minded. All 3 can play center field, defense up the middle. It's awesome. I love it. And as I said, I think the Mets are going to be okay. Win this damn series, because when we said the pregame yesterday, should be a sweep. Should be a sweep. This is going to be the toughest task in terms of going up against Sandy Alcantara. But just in case Sandy has his way with this Mets lineup, I feel pretty good about the Mets potentially getting to that bullpen. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty of Juan Soto in a nutshell, right? He's great. He'll step up in the biggest moment, but he'll also pass the baton. He is not going to go away from his strength by passing the baton like he did yesterday when he walked and Pete Alonso destroyed one over the wall, right? That's why Pete Alonso is so important to this team, because of the fact that Juan Soto will not go away from his game. If he doesn't like what he sees at the plate, he will take that walk. I know some people complain, oh, well, he walks too much. Because he got a great eye doesn't mean that's the worst thing in the world. Other guys got to step up. That's okay. That is okay. And Chris did have to go. So just to finish up this whole preview and pregame as a whole, what we want to see from Kodai Senga. I want to see Kodai Senga throw strikes. I want that ghost fork pitch to be nasty. But again, it's a big question mark today, right? The Mets gave him basically 2 extra days off. He basically is pitching on an 8th day of rest. So, I mean, there's more than enough rest. So there's no excuses for Kodai Senga today. The Mets are going to be very careful with him, especially the news with Sean Manaea. If you just tuning in and you haven't heard, Sean Manaea had a setback, probably won't be ready until the end of May. I'm looking like more of early June. So he's going to miss the first 2 months of the season. That is a big blow for the New York Mets. That's why Kodai Senga and yesterday with David Peterson is so important. We need these guys more than ever right now. David Peterson and Kodai Senga are the best pitchers in this rotation. They need to pitch like it. There is no excuses. Kodai Senga is supposed to be an ace. This guy really does have good stuff, but what are we going to get from Kodai Senga? I have no idea. It's going to be fun watching him. I hope he has it tonight. I think there's going to be a strict pitch count on him today because the Mets are not going to fuck around with Kodai Senga, and nor should they early on in the season. But we also need Kodai Senga to step up as well. You can't baby these guys every single start. You can't always give them an extra day off. You can't make everything perfect for Kodai Senga. There will be times when he has to pitch on regular 4 days rest, pitching on the 5th day with no special circumstances. He's got to step up. And today there is no excuse. Even though there'll be a pitch count limit on him, he's had all the rest he needs. So I'm not saying to pitch better than Sandy Alcantara because that is a tough task within itself if Alcantara's on. But Kodai Senga needs to give this team a chance to win. And that's what I want to see with Kodai Senga tonight. Again, Chris said it earlier. When it comes to the lineup and Sandy Alcantara, what does this lineup have to do tonight? They basically have to make him work, right? Be selective, but be aggressive at the plate, right? Don't try to do too much. If he's, pitch, doesn't have great location, take the walk, extend the inning. That's what you got to do against Sandy Alcantara. Get him out as quickly as possible. The Marlins are not going to extend him throughout this game. The pitch count, there's always going to be a pitch count on Sandy Alcantara. They're not going to mess around. The last thing they need is to get that guy hurt. That is their prime jewel. That is their shining star that they will be trading at the deadline. They will do everything possible to keep him healthy. The Mets got to make that very easy for them to make that decision. Get him out in the 4th inning. If you can do that, excellent. But if Alcantara is on, you still got to find a way to scrape a run or two because Kodai Senga is probably not going to go past the 5th inning along with Alcantara. You can't make the Marlins get a lead here and then do basically nothing against Alcantara. Yeah, you probably get to the Marlins bullpen, but you just never know. So final thoughts from me, guys, is take the series. Me and Chris agree. This should be a sweep. This is a no-name Marlins team. Yeah, they got a couple of decent prospects, decent players, but overall, this is a bad team. It's probably one of the worst teams in baseball. The Mets need to take full advantage just like they did yesterday. Step on their throats. When they're down, kick them. Kick them again. That's what you got to do. Win the series today. Go into tomorrow with the second start with Clay Holmes against Connor Gillespie. Go for the sweep tomorrow. And then enjoy the off day before you have your home opener on Friday. So yes, guys, there will be a post game. I will be solo on the post game tonight. So win or lose, I'll be doing the post game tonight. Chris has something, so we cannot join the post game, but I'll be here. So post game tonight, again, whenever the game is over, I set it for 8:50. So if you want to come in earlier and start chatting in the chat, talking in the chat, by all means, please do. After this stream is over, it's going to take you to the post game stream. Hit that like button early, guys. The more likes we get, the better it is for all of us. It just get eyes on that stream, guys. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Amazing Mets pregame show, Game 5 of the season. Mets looking for the series win today. Kodai Senga, Sandy Alcantara on the mound. Very interesting. Luisano Acuna is getting the start with the right-hander on the mound. We'll see if the Mets win, and I'll see you on the post-game show right after the game, guys. Have a good night. Enjoy the game, guys, and let's go Mets. See you tonight, guys. Good night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets